All right. Um, well, I have a couple of things we can talk about, but first I'll just ask a general question if we want to start with um the traveling from Michigan to Nebraska chapter. Did you guys find any interesting stories or I don't know, things that you learned from that chapter that you want to discuss? Or any questions if you didn't understand something?
You're Catherine, I think you're Catherine Rasband. I think you're muted.
I muted it because somebody was knocking at the door and I was debating whether to go answer it and I didn't. Anyway, yeah, I just thought that was really interesting that they've just joined this church, they're gung-ho, they're ready to go, and they start hearing rumors that they're taking more than one wife. I mean, how many people did that put off and who never came any further? Because I'm sure there were a lot. And there were even Joseph Smith's own brother was headed the other way, So
Yeah, that would have been disconcerting. You're his brother and yeah.
And seeing all the different things, it breaks my heart to see how much Phineas's parents tried to stop him. And like, I'm trying to find that direct quote where he says that his mother tried everything in her power to either through rumors or their flower or guilt trip or whatever it is to try to get them from going.
Well, it didn't sound like she was a
read.
very happy person.
Yeah.
Interrupt you.
No, he even said that she scolded so much that he had to leave the house. Her husband had to leave just to get away from her. Didn't it say something like that?
Yeah.
Yeah, and Annalisa too would, go and work in a separate room just to get out of the, I don't know, the contention.
That is intense.
Yeah.
Well, and the sad thing too is the father is just like, he'll come back. He always does. Well, he came back always to help with the farming.
Help you?
When they wanted him. But it makes it sound like they're saying he can't get off on his own. He'll come back, So.
Yeah.
Well, and his father died 2 years later. So if I remember right. So
yeah, that's exactly.
Yeah. I wonder if he felt guilty about that. And he writes this like, I know you're not going to live much longer, but he is writing this after he knows that he does die. So I think I would have felt guilty. Even if you're like, I don't know, just like I left you and that was it. I think parents depended on their kids back then more as they got older. So this may have been like a betrayal of the family.
Didn't we point out last time that it was the youngest son's duty to stay and help the parents? So he, they relied on him. He was the youngest son and he was supposed to stay and help them and not leave. Which is crazy because the oldest son was supposed to get all the property. I don't know why the youngest son had that responsibility, but that was kind of the tradition in those days.
And I think it's amazing to me to read all of this hardship and stuff that his parents tried to do to get him from leaving. But then as he's leaving on page 53 of the hardcover book, how he talks about how his heart is heavy with grief, leaving his mother and father, but that he talks good about his parents. My father's a good man. He's always kind to his family. And my mother's an industrious woman, always, doing what she's supposed to, raising the children, making money. And so even at what I could imagine is like the pinnacle of what I would imagine a hatred being, your parents are trying to stop you, they're trying to sabotage you. Oh, you'll come back, you won't make it. But he still has this great love for them. I feel like is very inspiring. And that final note is just a good note. Even though he wrote this later, that those are the last moments he reflects on his parents, is that they're good, hardworking people, despite everything else that was written about them. So I think that's real sweet.
And so maybe it was last week's, but he prayed that his father would quit trying torturing him about the church, and he went back. His father had shingles, but he didn't know that. They thought, well, they might have known it was shingles, but it was interesting what Janet said, that they believed that once it got all the way around your body, you would die. And so shingles is still a very bad disease. My sister-in-law got it, and it on her head, and it affected her brain and her equilibrium, and it took her over a year to recover from it. She couldn't walk straight. She couldn't get out of bed for 6 months. It was horrible. It had attacked her brain. And so, but anyway, he was very, very ill and in a lot of pain. And I'm sure Phineas thought that it was wrapping around him and he was going to die pretty soon, and that he had prayed for it. So he went and repented.
He prayed that he died. Not quite in that
No, he
way.
didn't pray that he'd die. He prayed
I
that
know.
he would be removed from being an obstacle in his way.
No, I know what you meant. It was just kind of like he realized that maybe he was going to get his prayer answered in a way that he didn't want.
Yeah.
So Marcia, on that page 53, is that your son in that picture? Since it says you gave the
That
picture.
that's my youngest son, Trent. He's 12 now. He was about 3 or 4.
So you went up to see.
Phenomenal photo.
Yeah, that's about 2 or 3 hours away from us on the other side of Michigan. We're near Detroit, and this is on the west side. Those 3, it's Phineas, and then Irene is in the middle, and then Mary Ann, who is one of their daughters. She died in 54, pretty young. She left 5 young children.
Oh, sad.
Oh,
That was
she was
sad.
the one. Wasn't she the one that Phineas said, "Oh, I have a sister. You can have her if you're a good man."
Oh, was that the one? Maybe it
I
was.
think she was the one.
Yeah, he seemed like a good man too. So
Yeah, he did. He supported him and
Yeah.
was successful.
interesting that she was, well, probably because he was not living exactly there, but they brought her back to be buried near Dad, and Mom hadn't died yet.
So how many siblings did Phineas have? Does anyone know offhand? Could look it up.
Phineas and Amasa. Oh, Phineas, this Phineas. Yeah.
Our Phineas. Well,
Darius.
they're both our Phineases, but the one we
Yeah.
The book's
no.
about.
And
won the book's about.
Darius is, and Marianne, and yeah, we got one of them. We got a list back here, didn't we?
7,
Darius.
Anne says.
Darius.
Yeah, I have it.
Ah,
Wow.
good. Tell me their
Okay.
names. What are their names?
There's Betsy, but she died when she was 3.
And the only reason they even know about her is because of a notation in his journal, right? That's the only thing they've ever
I
found.
think so.
Yeah.
And then there's Daniel, Eliza, Darius, Marianne, Phineas, and then Harriet.
Harriet, she married a few times. Interesting girl. Eliza ended up joining the church and went west with him eventually.
Yeah, I
And
think
she
so.
has ancestors and descendants in the church from her one child. Darius was the Niles Republican editor of the newspaper, prominent. And Daniel, was he the one that married a couple times? Ended up marrying, had a young housekeeper and said she can get my inheritance if she doesn't marry. And then
Oh, I
she
think that might have
and then he
been, yeah.
married her, and it was kind of yeah.
Yeah.
That's in the
So I
back.
believe one of his grandchildren bought the farm when Irene died. I would like to find out what happened after that.
Very interesting.
I think that says that here, that one of the grandchildren bought the farm. I saw it.
Yeah, it
somewhere.
might have been Eliza's daughter. One of them, anyway.
I think it's interesting that Irene marries 3 times, 2 more times.
Especially when she was such a crab, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if we know much about that. The only thing we know is that she ends up on some paperwork with a different last name, Forbes. And we don't know how or where. I'd like to dig in a little more to some records out there, but
Just on page 54, it talks about the death of Irene Churchill Cook and mentions that she married 3 times, and the different things.
Oh, yeah.
Well, the Forbes, because she's known on a land record as Irene Forbes, and we don't know that.
But
Oh,
it's-
yeah, it says
there's-
third time. I don't
And
know.
then full,
That's where it says they sold the home to Lucy
Oh.
Spencer, their
Mm.
niece.
Yes, you're right.
So-
You know what? I'm
Yeah.
not sure that third marriage. I talked to Janet about this a little bit ago. I think it's the Irene Bush, because we found another record where she's called it. I don't think that's her. I was showing Janet some discrepancies.
well, it's in this book.
don't-
This is what
yeah.
people are gonna read.
But I don't think that's correct personally, but we'll have to write a paper about that someday. And
Well,
Irene
it
Forbes is just
says
that one land record. So
In the probate record, she's known as Irene Bush. Irene is buried next to Phineas anyway.
yeah,
Very interesting.
but we don't know. We don't have marriage records or anything. So she's a bit of a mystery after. And she's buried as Irene Cook, Phineas, a wife of Phineas Cook. Interesting if she was married again. No last names, not buried near any of those men. So it's a bit of a mystery.
It's- Like you say, especially since she was so crotchety and disagreeable, and she's not that handsome.
But she was a hard worker. And that's what they married for too in those days, is someone to keep house.
Well, that's true. And if she had property, maybe they married her for property.
Yeah.
Mm.
That's
Now,
what-
I like the story of the wagon. Now, this, I think there is some controversy to this, but I always stated this to my children definitively that Brigham Young, and it doesn't really say this in here, but it has a picture of his wagon, and that picture comes from the Church History Museum.
And I've seen that wagon, and I've
Yeah.
told the story.
Yeah,
That was Phineas's wagon.
Phineas built it, and I think at one time it said, had a little thing that said built by Phineas Wolcott Cook.
It
That's the
is.
wagon.
It does.
That Brigham Young rode into the valley in. But
Yeah.
other published sources say he rode in on Wilford Woodruff's wagon. And so I always tell them, nope, they're wrong. He
I was
rode in-
thinking, what if he had like two wagons for the duration of the journey,
probably
and like
did. He
Phineas is
had a
at the
lot of
first
people.
part. Yeah,
And
so
maybe
maybe used by his
Wilfred
company.
took Phineas, because Phineas wasn't there. So maybe Wilford took Phineas's wagon most of the way. But then Brigham was so sick that he said, come get in my wagon. We don't know.
Well,
Still exciting.
Phineas doesn't take very much
Yeah.
credit for anything. So even though he was in charge of, is it the Beehive House or I think the Beehive.
It's up at the Daughters of the Utah Pioneer Carriage
Yeah.
House, back behind the Daughters.
The
of Utah
wagon is?
Pioneer- Yeah, museum.
Yeah. But like, so he even built the Beehive House, but you know, there was so much contention. He finally just told the guy, you be in charge. I'll just do what you want me to do.
Yeah.
So the other guy got all the credit. And the same thing with the wagon. Somebody else is getting, I mean, it doesn't matter. He wouldn't care because that's the kind of person he was. But I want my great grandfather to have some credit.
We
Yeah.
can take credit for him.
No.
Yeah.
But yeah, another thing that I thought was very interesting that I picked up on throughout these two chapters, but especially in the second chapter we read about his time in winter quarters, is that every single time something awful happens, or like, you know, his parents are like working against him, or his daughter dies, or he's starving, he always gives like greatness to God, which I think is remarkable. His family is starving, his children are dying, but he always prays to God to help him find strength. And one time that I found that was really, really prevalent was in on page 62 of the hardcover one, where Annalisa was so sick with scurvy, I think it says, and she almost died. But then he had an impression to go get someone else, Elisha Groves, to help lay hands on her, pray for her, and she was healed. And then it says immediately after that, as soon as she was healed, she was on the brink of death. She was going to die. It says in the second to last paragraph, I went to my secret place and thanked my Father in heaven. that she could be my companion in this whole cold-hearted world a while longer. How sweet. And also
Yeah.
so remarkable that that's the first thing he does.
Yeah.
He always thanks God, and he's always grateful for his blessings. After all my afflictions, I can still see the hand of the Lord, you know. I just think that is so remarkable, and I think really gives testament to the kind of person that he was. That it was so ingrained in him that, you know, he should always thank God. And, you know, even through all of these afflictions I'm going through, winter quarters, the most difficult time in his life, he was still able to hold true to what he knew to be true, and also to give thanks and to help others. And, you know, I just think it really shows his character and like who he really was. And so I
Well,
found it
especially
very heartwarming and inspiring.
when you see some of the other people and how they dealt with him. I mean, when that baby is dead on the bed and one of Brigham Young's wives come in and yells at them and gives them heck for not being happy with their doctor,
Yeah.
And
you
he
know,
was
how
quacky because,
unfeeling and how inconsiderate and how horrible, really how horrible.
yeah,
made me
and they
cry.
had agreed with, the two doctors had agreed to what to do, and he hadn't done any of it.
No.
And,
Yeah,
and
that was sad.
Mm-hmm.
So heartbreaking. And yeah, that was I was getting worked up and angry and so sad reading this, thinking about what would I do if I was in his position. You know, but then reading this, and especially after that happened, after Charlotte died, how he says, "But by the help of the Lord, I did overcome my feelings." How remarkable. Whenever he's dealing with, you know, these intense emotions that I was getting worked up, I'm like, I want to go yell at these people. That he was able to ask the Lord for help and to rely on the Lord in all things. And so it's beautiful. It's very, very inspiring.
Well, and again, he was so humble and so willing, and he shared flour to where then he had no food for his own family. But then when he would ask someone to lend him 75 cents or whatever, they wouldn't. They were selfish.
people's
And
personality change when they're poor, often. You
Mm.
know, we just don't experience it, where we don't have any food and people are asking us to help. You know, I don't know, but it didn't seem like they worked together very well. And
No,
Phineas was generous with what he didn't have. I mean,
yeah. Yeah, I mean,
and the gun, loaning his gun and
Mm.
not getting it back. Oh, maybe that's ahead. I might have read
that's ahead, but yeah, he loans the gun in this one. Doesn't tell us. He got it back the one time and then he loaned it again.
and then he got it back, and the man was so mad he didn't take it with him. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, it was Phineas's.
And I think it's also very interesting to read kind of like these true stories of what winter quarters was like, because and this is probably, I haven't read too much literature, firsthand accounts of what it was like. So in my head, I think, oh, they're waiting to go out west. They're dealing with all this persecution from Missouri, Nauvoo, the prophets died. You got to relocate out west. Everyone is probably super helpful to each other all the time. And, you know, I had this idea of everybody being kind all the time. Just, you know, because, you know, they're all members of the church. They're all going through the same thing, but that they're still human, you know, they still are get upset with each other and oh, you're not doing this right. You're not doing that right. Why don't you help me with this? Well, why don't you do that? And so I think it's very interesting, and it makes me want to read more firsthand accounts of what winter quarters and Nauvoo was like, because while these are the saints and they are going out west, you know, to establish Zion, that they're still humans and can still get angry and frustrated and make mistakes and have quarrels and things like that. And so that's another reason why I love this chapter, is really what it was like. Thank goodness Anne had a midwife, because we're in Indian country and we probably weren't gonna get help delivering a baby. And so I think it's very fascinating reading these firsthand accounts and kind of giving a new insight as to what life was like.
It gives you an appreciation for what they were building too, because we have it so easy right now. And I'm not saying it will always be. I mean, obviously we have our trials and everything. and we don't know what's ahead with the second coming on its way. But we've had things pretty easy for a long time, and they had to go through so much, and they had to learn. They had not been a member of the church their whole life. They didn't grow up with teachers saying, singing to them, let us love one another, and, let us be kind, and all these things that we've learned since we were born. They never had that. And so then, but it would be interesting to me to see some of these people who treated him so badly if they stayed active.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, some of them we know because they're famous, but like it said, this Grant, what was it? It's Jedediah Grant's older brother joined the church, and it said that he did so much for the church. It said that he's kind of known for being kind of a scoundrel, but I don't know the name. You guys know the name of the Grant that
George Grant?
Was
George,
it George?
George Grant you're talking about?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see it on
Jedediah.
page 66. They talk about him a little bit.
But I don't know what he's known for that's kind of not good, because all I read was what he did do. And
Yeah.
I guess I'll have to look him up.
Yeah.
Just to cause some trouble.
Yeah.
I did note that his journal reads like the who's who of early church history.
Yeah.
Patty Sessions, the midwife who delivered Analyze's baby, she's famous for midwife to the early church. Laurel Thatcher Ulrich wrote a book called House Full of Females a few years ago and had part of Patty Sessions' journals in there. That was really interesting. So she is well known. I mean, she's probably not in your Relief Society manual, but she's a very prominent early church person. John M. Bernheiser, that they talk about on 69, he stayed behind in Nauvoo and was like legal counsel for the church and settling Nauvoo affairs for years. He's a really big name. I mean, some of these not as big as Brigham Young and Joseph Smith, but these are like, he rubbed shoulders with later Father Morley. He's going to encounter him in Utah. That's the Morley farm we just went to in Kirtland. That is Father Morley, and he rubbed shoulders with him. And just all these people like Solomon Angel.
Brigham Young.
Yeah, Brigham Young. He just walks up and says, I want to visit with Brigham Young. I mean, how awesome is that? We don't know Phineas. We know Phineas's name, but other people don't know Phineas's name, but he rubbed shoulders with all of them.
Have any of you read that little pamphlet that's Let's Talk About Polygamy?
Yeah.
Was
And
he in that?
Phineas is quoted in it.
Yeah, and so those of us who are from Alonzo Laker, which is everyone except Jennifer and Wendy. Those of us, well, this is our grandfather, so we're all cousins.
Yeah,
we're all cousins, but anyway, and my mind went blank. Oh, so do you guys know James Henry Hart, who's our other great grandfather? His wife is quoted in there too. So we've got a couple of family members quoted in there. So.
Phineas was quoted as saying, oh, I'm not good at exact quotes. We said something like, that was the polygamy was the end of all my happiness. He's got a great quote about. We'll get to that in later chapters.
Well,
That's
didn't
so
she
fun.
say something that that he married two 18-year-olds the same day, Amanda Savage and Catherine.
Yeah, and one turned out
anyway.
really well, and one didn't for him.
Well,
I mean,
he said, or she said, they were kids. She had to rear them.
Yeah. Oh, she had to bring him up. I bet that was
and
hard.
Annalisa and Amanda Polly ended up best friends their whole lives. They are buried next to each other in Garden City, Utah. And when Phineas left with Johanna and went to Wyoming at the end, those two stuck together. They were Relief Society president and counselor, one or the other, for ever, like 20 years or 40 years or something huge. They were best buds. But yeah, Catherine didn't work out so
well. I loved the thing when Quentin Cook came and talked to our family organization that couple of years ago. You weren't there probably quite yet.
I was, and I came out to the meeting in 2019.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay, I didn't know. I guess you were part of it.
That's right when I joined the board after that. Yeah.
But I really liked how he said, well, back then, polygamy was very difficult, which we all know. And it was not uncommon for them to get a divorce. And if women wanted a divorce, they were always granted it, not men, because it was different. But if the women were not happy in the polygamous situation, they were allowed to get a divorce. And so obviously, I mean, that was hard. So we kind of judge her off. She couldn't make her marriage work or whatever, but
Yeah, but he was an older man.
yeah, yeah.
And an established family, you know,
Yeah.
she's just like getting in. Let me join your family. Not really like, let's the two of us make a new family. It was
Yeah, no,
Not
it
like
was
grow
join in
up
with your
together.
family.
hard. And then
Yeah.
the other thing he said that I really liked is because I've read the journals and all of this through my life. I knew that when polygamy was abandoned, that he went and lived with the youngest wife, and it kind of bugged me. It's like he was with the oldest wife the longest. Didn't they have a love that they couldn't, why? And Quentin said he went with the youngest wife because she still had children at home. She's the one that needed him. And that just really answered something for me, because it really bugged me that he just went and lived with the youngest, prettiest,
Yeah.
But someone said they did have kind of a falling out, Eliza and Phineas, probably over polygamy or anyway, I don't know what, but
I think he
Yeah, I
asked
know.
her for a divorce, and that might have been because the polygamy police were on his heels. I'm just guessing because it does not say this in the record. But he was jailed for polygamy,
was,
and then he ended up going to Wyoming because of polygamy. And if he could have married the last wife, it would have been legal. So he asked her for divorce, but she did say it hurt her feelings. I don't
I'm
know if it was
sure.
granted.
It would have hurt my feelings. I would have been mad.
I don't know if they did get a divorce. I don't think we have record of that. But-
Back to this Thomas Johnson, wasn't he the one that lied to Brigham Young about Phineas?
What pages? Who's Thomas? What page are you seeing?
Well, I'm looking on page 66, but Thomas,
Yes, he's the one that caused all the problem with Phineas and Brigham Young and the other.
so he was adopted by John D. Lee, and John D. Lee was the one that they blamed for the Mountain Meadow massacre, and he was
really?
hung for it.
Later. That happens later.
Oh, much later. Yeah, much
Yeah.
later. But I believe he was stake president, and he had to take the rap for it. Whether he was the one that was totally guilty, I don't know, but he was the one that they executed for it. No, sorry, it was firing squad.
Mm.
He wasn't hung, it's the firing squad in 1877.
Yep, that was John D. Lee.
Hmm.
But I don't know if he was a scoundrel all the time. That was definitely.
Oh, I'm sure
But
he wasn't all the time because he was stake president, I think.
Yeah, yeah.
And they had been through so much, and these people came through, they were innocent, but they had heard rumors that they weren't, and they just took an action that turned out to be very bad black thing for the Mormons,
Yeah.
that they massacred those people that were coming through because they thought that they were coming to fight them, I
Charlie
guess.
just came out with a new book about that called Vengeance is Mine. He wrote maybe more than 10 years ago, Mountain Meadows Massacre book that he researched for 20
Who is
years.
this?
Richard Turley. He used to be church historian. He just retired a few years ago. His new book is called Vengeance is Mine, and I've heard it's good. It's Rick Turley. So his Mountain Meadow Massacre research book is supposed to be the gold standard of finding out what really happened there. But back to this chapter, I have the dream that he talked about where he was bothered by polygamy, and let's see, page 56. He hears William Smith and all these other people saying how terrible the Mormons are. They're camping. He's trying to overcome their arguments. Leave us alone. being somewhat disturbed in consequence of the stories we heard from the apostates about corruption of the Mormons. For it was a continual harangue from morning to night, and being tired of disputing them continually, I went away and prayed that the Lord would grant me his spirit, that I might know what more to say to them, to give me power to resist them, after which I felt much strengthened. First, like you're saying, Anne, he always turns to the Lord. You know, that's his first go-to. I really like that. That night, I dreamed that I had 2 young wives. One had red hair, slim in stature, the other black hair, not quite as tall as the other. I looked at them, could hardly believe it was so, but after I had convinced myself the ancient order was again restored and it was right, I awoke being convinced. So I asked an artist friend of mine to paint this for me. And I wasn't totally happy with the way it turned out, but I will show you what she did. So this is the painting.
We
And
can't see it.
can you see it? Oh my
Yeah.
God. Right there. So
Mhm.
it's supposed to be him dreaming and then him looking at the girls. So I don't know if you get that that's the same person, but he's dreaming, you know, out on the trail. We have the wagon over here. And these 2 girls, and this is supposed to be like the apostates, and they're walking off with all their trouble, walking into the darkness. And what I did like was, oh, it's a little confusing, but look at these 2 women's faces.
Oh, they are not happy.
I wish it was supposed to be, it was a very comforting dream to Phineas.
Instead of
And-
2,
You're gonna marry these 2 cross girls.
But
the
yeah,
one-
I'm crazy about that. And
the
yeah.
black-haired expression's okay. It's just she's not smiling, but she doesn't look mad. But the other one looks mad.
Yeah. Maybe Catherine was the redhead and Annalise. I wonder if
Yeah,
one of
I'd be
them-
curious which was which. We don't
Yeah.
have much information about their physical appearance, do we?
Maybe I need to just paint over her mouth a little bit. And the arms, I don't know if that's supposed to be like,
Just put a little curve.
yeah. So anyway, I had hoped to use this to, I want to do some more work about their time in polygamy, but I don't know if I'll use that picture. Anyway, I thought you would enjoy that.
Well, didn't he say, I thought I had problems before I took on more than one wife, but after I really had problems.
I didn't know the beginning of my problems. Yeah. But he felt like I woke being convinced that the ancient order was again restored and it was right. So I think he's open-minded, open-hearted enough because he left Michigan like, oh, we heard that and we knew they were just crazy. That couldn't be true. And he ends up converted to the principle. So I think that's very instructive.
It's very inspiring to me. I know I've said this already, but that the first thing he does is he turns to the Lord and pray. Like you said, like when he heard about this in Michigan, oh, it must not be true. I'm just going to keep going on my way. But then once he comes to the terms with, oh, maybe the Mormons do this, like actually do this. Because part of me thinks, oh, I would be up in debate in my head, talking to other people, or, really just thinking about it for myself, but he just immediately turns to the Lord. Hey, help me understand this. Help me know if this is true, what to do, things like that. And so honestly, and how he does this, I mean, I know I said this already, but throughout the chapter, it really inspires me to do that in my own life with struggles I have, whether it's, with concepts or with emotions or, trials I'm going through, but just to turn to the Lord first and really rely on him for the strength. And Phineas does that, throughout his whole life, but especially throughout these chapters. I like that he emphasizes that a lot in his journal. It makes me want to emphasize that when I write in my journal versus just writing exactly what happened, It's really, really cool.
Yeah, and I think he had several situations, just hard things, where he just had to say, I'm so determined to do what I said, which was to follow the Lord, that promise he had made years ago, and to go through these hard things. And he says at one point, and I think it was later on with his daughters dying, that it was my patience that was tested, but never my faith. So he always, had that very strong faith to be able to go through these hard things, whether that's mom and dad trying to convince me to not leave Michigan, if that's the deal with polygamy, if that's we're getting sick all the time, and and your baby dies and your 7-year-old dies, and so I think just during all these trials, he always remembers that I had made this promise to follow the Lord, and I'm gonna do that no matter what. And like Anne said, any time he's in trouble, doesn't know what to do, or needs help, he just turns to the Lord because he wants to follow him, and never once was his faith tested. And he talks about, several people leaving the church, and there was even a rumor that he would leave after everything happened, like with that doctor. And he said, I hope this is the last lie my enemies will tell of me. Like, he was just always determined, even through all these trials, to keep going. So that's amazing to read about.
Well, at least in these chapters, he seemed to have a lot of control over his feelings and emotions. He felt it like we would, but then before he acted on it, he would sit on it, and pray, and so that he didn't go cause problems while he was frustrated. And how many of us do that? I don't do very well at that. You do that? You sit on it? Good girl.
I try to sit on it.
Yeah. I sometimes don't react, but I'll go talk to all my family about how I've been wronged by so and so.
Yeah.
Well, those were quite the crossing the plains stories, how he's fording the rivers and carrying people over.
And that one
Yeah.
story, I'm trying to find where it is, where he comes across a family in the rain. I'm trying to remember where it is, but he kind of takes them in, helps them, takes them into his house, gets their clothes dried, gets them fed, and analyzes there, helping them too. I'm trying to find where that is, because that is so inspiring, where even amongst all of their personal challenges and things going on, he's willing to lend a helping hand always. I'm trying to think of where that was.
Yeah, it was near the end of the second chapter.
Yeah.
I can't remember either. But yeah, I thought that was nice to hear, because you hear all these stories of people, like you said, we think it's this kind of wonderful place where everyone's helping each other, but then you hear these stories of Phineas is getting cheated out of money, when he was doing this work, and the doctor didn't do the right thing, and they were disagreeing. But then there were people like Phineas who, did make a big sacrifice to help out this family, which is, what I think we always think of when we think of, pioneers traveling out west, is everyone's helping each other. And so there was some of that, and it's nice to see that Phineas was that person who would always look for people in need, and he was the one crossing the river 9 times. So yeah, that's nice to
We really
read
owe him
about.
a lot, because that I have a friend that joined the church 10 years ago or something, and no, it's been longer than that. Anyway, she joined the church, and she says, yeah, I've always felt like I've been a member. I just, wasn't baptized. And and we were talking. She says, yeah, my family was just like yours back in the early pioneer days. The only difference was my great-great-grandfather was told to go settle such and such a community, and he said no, and then left the church. So then it took her that many generations to get back into the church.
Yeah, where Phineas was an I will go and do kind of guy.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah. And we see people like Patty Sessions being carried on somebody's back so she can go help a woman give birth. Like, there were a lot of people that were there for each other, but a lot who don't. I think they're desperation. They're truly desperate to poverty.
Yeah.
Just when he gets to winter quarters, and I can't remember this chapter before, and he hurts his leg, and they're laid up in this house with no food. Where's the Relief Society? Where's the Ward Council to come in and help? Yeah, where's the casserole for the sick? But they were all so desperate around them. Desperate.
Can
that
you imagine the pain of hitting your foot with an axe?
having no medicine and then being
No
laid up with no
painkillers.
work. I mean, no work is no food, and your wife, just everything. And there are people lining the, not even a street, whatever, with similar situations. I think that's where where some of the not so nice behavior comes out. I have to protect what I have. I can't share because I might not have.
You know, when you think about it, but yeah.
Yeah, so understandable, but it's nice to see the generosity come out too. The Patty Sessions going to help. And Annalisa giving birth on the trail. I mean, when it says, oh, because she's going to be confined soon, like, oh, she's traveling pregnant. Oh, how fun. As if that journey wasn't already so much fun. She's traveling pregnant. Wow.
Man.
And many of them were.
Mhm.
I
Oh,
don't
she'll
even want
figure
my
that
baby
out.
at home, let alone on the trail. Of course, I'm not going to have any more babies, but
But it wouldn't be on a trail.
no.
Yeah, we visited this Pioneer Cemetery on page 68 in Nauvoo, or in winter quarters. They have this big plaque. This is just a portion of it that tells all the children who died in winter quarters. And we see Charlotte Aurelia Cook, age 6, and Eliza H. Cook, 2. There's a blank Cook between them, but then Eliza H. Cook, 7 months.
Oh,
Was his 2 little girls that died there. And it's a really nice statue of a child, I think, in the burial grounds. And the burial grounds are not marked, but they have a map of where people are, but they're not marked on the ground. So it's just a big open hill. But you can find their names in there. It's right by the new temple. Well, new, it was 20 years ago, but it's a mini temple there, right in winter quarters, right by the burial grounds. Yeah. So I wanted to show off one more thing for you. Miss Allison here is our social media person, and she takes portions of the journal and puts them on Facebook and serializes portions. So I was recognizing some of this from some of hers. I can show it to you here. Brought up some. And then she's been doing, we tried to find some pictures to go along with them with let's see where, and she's been doing some AI pictures too. So I went back into this is where Allison pulled out some about them traveling, trouble crossing the Fox River, William Smith, and we also advertised like our book club here. So here's William Smith and how they encountered him. There's my picture of the dream he had. And she just did one. Let's see, this was a good little reel she put on about his time in Michigan. So you can go back and there's a good AI picture. I like that one. She is a little farther ahead than our reading, but there's another reel about his time in Michigan. Here's one about Patty Sessions. When Eliza was born, that's a good picture. Looks like a harried woman with a baby. And let's see, the Indians they encountered. So all of these are AI pictures. They're not meant to necessarily represent. This is a picture, an actual photo at the grave site. That's just a corner marker there. It's not actually a person marker, but just shows the corner of it. But I really liked, Allison did one recently. Oh, this one we talked about the eclipse that he documented, or during our eclipse, he documented something going on in Michigan when he was living there. Okay, I'm going to zoom ahead. She did. There's where Dr. Bernheisel, and when she has another baby, Augusta Prescindia, who I believe lived, she
Mhm.
had that baby, lived. He has another dream that I really like, and I love this picture. Here's where it is. That he has this dream about apostates. While we were there, we heard William Weeks had gone back to the States from the Valley. He was the architect of the Nauvoo Temple. He worked with me in the mill under Frederick Kessler. They had a spirit of apostasy with them. While there, they said much against the authorities of the church. It troubled me, and I had a dream. I thought a number of us were standing on a piece of ice about 4 rods square, which was hard and sound, and all around the ice appeared thick and rotten. I did not mingle with them in the conversation, but I saw that I had on a beautiful pair of skates, and I looked around to see if anyone else had any, but found none. Stopping short, I began to look at them, and I saw them go off to the south and southeast. After they got 4 or 5 rods, they would fall through the ice, and that was the last I saw of them until all had gone but Weeks and I and Frederick Kessler. The 2 of them stood yet talking. Finally, Kessler said, "Come, boys, let's go." "No," I said, "I can't go that way." Then he started on and left me alone. I stood still and watched them and saw them both go through the ice, one after the other. I then began to think how I should get to land in safety. Finally, I concluded to take a circle around, which I did. As I struck the rotten ice, I could feel it crack and give under my feet, which made my hair rise. But as I turned my face to the west, I came to another hard piece of ice like the one I had left, and it became wider and wider until it came to land. And I went so fast without any exertion that it nearly took my breath until I landed at the top of the mountain and awoke. This made me think that sooner or later they would apostatize, and I must not follow the spirit they had. And Allison, that's a great picture. I really like that one.
And so he had to go to the west because that's where they were going. But
Yeah.
the states, I think, represented his testimony, his faith. That's what carried him through, was his testimony.
Yeah. And he was worried about the influence of these other people and how rotten the ice looked, but he was able to make a solid foundation of it to make it across. So good work, Allison. Excellent.
Allison. That is so, so cool.
He was kind of a visionary man. He had dreams and he really was close to the spirit.
Yeah.
My dad was like that, but I'm not.
Well, I think sometimes we expect huge miracles when we don't really need huge miracles. I think they did need more testimony. I mean, more
It had to have more.
because they had so many challenges
Yeah.
that if they didn't have that to hold on to, they couldn't have endured it. But where did this picture come of them falling through the ice?
Now, Allison created that with AI.
Oh, no kidding.
Sorry. Yes. So I just put in a
Lovely.
prompt for, I read those and I'm like, what could be single like snapshots of sort of what happens. And it sometimes takes a couple of tries because sometimes they'll be like, they're just mountains and they're in the plains. That's often one. Or just something just looks terrible. So I'll have to try to come up with the best I can. But yeah, all
I
AI
didn't know you could
generated.
have them do artwork.
Yeah, it is very cool. I love it. Yeah.
I didn't notice this without Marcia's help, but I did see the horse with 6 legs or 5 legs.
I was telling him, AI is not good
It's
with
not great.
legs.
It
Legs
is
and
definitely not perfect. And often faces, they're like all like blurry. So any close up of faces are usually not great. So yeah.
Yeah. What's the program you use, Allison?
I use Facebook Messenger AI. So you
Is it free?
yeah, it is free, which I really like. I like in a text message, I just do it to my brother. I'm like, just ignore everything I send you because I can't send it to myself. But I just put in the @meta.ai/imagine and then I give it a prompt. And do a couple of attempts until you get something that works. Yeah.
And she and Becca Groberg, another Phineas' cousin, are working on some children's books of Phineas's stories with artwork. And
Yeah, we're very excited about that. Yeah.
so as we're reading, we need to tell Allison, like, this would make a good story. Maybe we could do one on his dreams. I don't know if we want to deal with polygamy in the children's book, but the falling through the ice cave, I mean, that's awesome. You could come up with several pictures.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good one. Their first one is a bear chase story from an earlier.
Very good.
That is a good story.
I need to leave, but tell me what our reading will be next time
Yeah.
and
Right,
when
yeah.
we meet again.
I believe the next time we meet will be in August. Is that right?
Yeah.
The first Saturday in
Okay.
August. So we're not doing it next month because it's like right after the 4th of July. We think probably a lot of people will be busy or traveling.
August
So we'll do it August
Yeah,
3rd.
August 3rd.
And we'll read the next 2 chapters, which are the journey to Utah and then Salt Lake City. So those will be the 2 chapters.
Okay, so page 71 through 82.
Yes.
Oh, thank you so much. Sorry, I've got another meeting, but it's been great.
Yeah, thank you for joining.
Do you have any more you want to talk about, girls?
Yeah, just about covers it. We went through a lot, especially in these 2 chapters. I'm excited to hear how the trek west goes.
Yeah, he was in Brigham Young's company, his second company. Well, that's cool.
I like how he just goes up to Brigham. He's like, I want to go with you. And Brigham's like, why not? Come on.
Jennifer, did you have something to say?
I was, coming at this pretty much from the outside and doing a deep dive in LDS history. I was moved by the fact that he thought he was going to Nauvoo because communication was so poor at that time. And along the way, he was told, nope, you're going to Nebraska, and taking that on faith. Like, okay, where I thought I was going, I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm going here. And that's, imagine today, that would be a big leap for people even now. And how amazing that was at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, and when he's
Yeah.
already been told these Mormons, they got these weird, they're corrupt, they're amoral and whatever. Now I'm not even going where I told me I'm going. I mean,
Right.
Well, and imagine when you go on a trip and you have a destination and you're in the car for several hours. If you got to sort of where you thought you were going, then realize you had another even few hours, that was kind of what happened to him, only in a very large scale. He didn't have just another few hours, so yeah, he had to have a lot of faith.
Yeah, that's very true.
now was this the chapter when he left? I really like this part when he left Michigan and he says goodbye to his brother-in-law, Salmon, who says he's going to come to Utah, but then he doesn't ever. So he's a good guy, but he kind of knew. And he said, I think it was the end of that chapter.
Yeah, it talks
Yeah.
about it.
Yeah, when he's walking away with, page 55. God bless you, Salmon, and all that you have from this time forth and forever. As these words fell from my lips, I felt the power of God resting upon me, and I knew they would be fulfilled. Here again, the dark clouds of despair broke away, and the light of the Spirit dawned gently on my mind. And as we proceeded on our journey, I grew lighter and lighter until I felt cheerful as in former times. I really like his expression of emotion. Sometimes Phineas's writings, like reading that Goshen book a lot, was just the facts, ma'am. No, I wanted to say, how are you feeling with all these people attacking you or all this heart? This gives us some feeling. He had clouds of despair. I mean, this was really hard.
Yeah.
And then he's so sad to leave them. But when he puts that foot forward, it brings that peace. I think the ice falling through story too, he had to start. Well, I'll try walking on this rotten part. He had to start, and then he sees it get solid and he can make it. So he has to put that foot forward. and then he finds the divine strength and help. I really like that part.
Well, we know he had to have divine strength and help to live through what he went through. Especially he had the malaria, he always had chills and was sick, and he chopped his foot with an axe, and they didn't have antibiotics. They didn't have anything like that to fix it. And, I mean, for him to live through all of that, he was watched over. And Eliza too. And
the wives,
and
no
Eliza.
epidurals, and they're all their babies.
Salmon, is that how you pronounce his name? Salmon and his wife divorced, and that's when she came to Utah, right?
Yeah, they did.
Yes. By
Because he wouldn't
1850.
go, I think.
Yeah.
Marcia, I'm not gonna make it. I don't know for sure, but we're leaving to Lake Powell on Saturday. Might not make it to the meeting. If I
Okay.
don't, then sign someone take minutes for you or something.
Okay, sure.
But I'll let you know for sure. I don't know what. I imagine we'll leave early, so maybe I can do it in the car. I don't know, but I can't really take minutes
But
for you.
we'll take notes for you. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
That's fine. Did you get my email about working on projects?
No.
I just sent you an email last night.
Okay. No, I haven't
about
on my
agenda.
list.
So we have board meetings every month on the second Saturday, and any of you are welcome to come if you want, talking about our projects. But please put on your calendars August 17th. Is our big gathering in Goshen, Utah, where we will be unveiling the book. And we'll have copies for sale, but it is for sale already on Amazon right now. You can.
Is it going to be the same price?
There's like 20 something dollars for hardcover, 23 for soft cover, 35 for hardcover.
But is it
Okay.
going to be the same price on Amazon as it is at the?
I was gonna see, I think I can get a discount if I buy a bunch of authors copies. So there we might be able to offer an in-person discount, and I was gonna send out a pre-order for those who are in person, and we could hand them out. But other than that, it's on Amazon. We're gonna have a day full of events. You can go to the temple that morning, set your own, whatever you want to do there. We'll just meet there, and then have a picnic, and then have a speaker. A BYU professor is going to come talk about the history of the area, Goshen, Garrett Dirkmott. And then we will have a little driving tour of Goshen with Dave Cook, some pioneer games and crafts, little things. So it's going to be a fun day. I hope families will come, and we will broadcast via Zoom the speaker. So if people are far away, they want to zoom in and see our speakers. So spread the news to your families. If you're in the Goshen area or Utah area, I don't know, there's like 12 people that live in the Goshen area. So it's a small community, but if you're there, come in person, and if not, zoom in and see us, and that'll be very fun. So
Thank you.
yes,
I wish I could get my kids to do this, but they all have young children with soccer games and dance and everything on Saturdays.
Yeah. Anybody who wants to, feel free to log in and just kind of listen in the background if they want. That's welcome too. While I'm bored at soccer games. I don't know if I'm the only one who goes to. Yeah,
I have really
quite bored.
I have a lot of grandkids and they all have games, and my husband goes and he's like, you should go. And I'm like, I didn't even want to go to my own kids, let alone my grandkids.
I did my duty.
I know.
Yeah.
Occasionally I'll
Eating at
go.
soccer games and football games in the snow.
I know.
Yeah.
And the rain.